Okay, I guess with that said, we can start the evening. I guess I will be more formally introduced later on in the program by Adam, but just by way of a short introduction, my name is Alex. I'm a program manager here at Beam Data, and I wanted to welcome everybody to the information session. Ultimately, what we want to do here is familiarize you with WeCloudData, um, the boot camp we provide, the educational program we provide, particularly for data science. And then ultimately within that, familiarize you with what I think is the most important aspect of the package we offer, and that is the real client projects. And in doing so, Adam, if you can just change the slide there. I just wanted to go over the agenda very briefly. So very shortly, I'll throw it off to Adam, who is our program manager for the data science program. And he will sort of better inform you about the ins and outs of boot camp, the various options, and how that plays on the resume. But then we'll talk about the importance of the client projects, which are in themselves sort of deeply embedded into the educational and program experience for WeCloud, and to my mind, what sort of sets it apart from every other bootcamp. And then we'll talk more directly about the real client projects use cases. So in this case, we'll talk about recommender systems we have established for clients, as well as a time series forecasting project that we also did. Then we'll talk a little bit more generally about the projects we've undertaken, and ultimately the projects that our students and graduates of the bootcamp come to undertake. But again, all that hopefully will be a lot clearer, and we'll go into it definitely we'll go into it more thoroughly. And with that, I will pass it off to Adam to talk about the data science bootcamp.
Hi everyone, my name is Adam. I'm a data science program manager. So, sorry. Sorry. So I want to talk about our coming cohort. If you're interested to become a data scientist, and you do need to get proper educations, and we do have coming cohort start on November, and for the part-time, and January for the full-time. Same for West and East time zone. Okay, so let me spend like maybe 3 to 5 minutes to explain like the difference between the full-time and part-time. For the full-time, there will be 3 months training, so you will learn some experience, and including the SQL, Python, data scientist, machine learning, like data scientist tools and machine learning and big data. So you will have like 4 to 5 projects. And once you graduate, and you will receive one mentorship, and also the mentorship of up to 6 months after you graduate the mentorship, and you will join the real client project, which our project lead gonna talk about in the coming sessions. So for the part-time, the only difference will be, actually there are a few differences. One difference will be the training time. Instead of 3 months, there will be 6 months training. It's like 10 hours per week. And you will still learn exactly the same thing. And the only difference will be the real client project is it's optional. So that's the difference. So if you're interested about our program, you can send your information so that we can let someone to contact with you. And also we do have some coming events on October 26th, and we will talk about the job market. And on November 2nd, and we will give you more introduction about our bootcamp, and you will know why we are so successful, because there are a few factors. We are top one, like a education school in cross Ontario, and we have 91% replacement rate, and the 91% of the students who land a job stay in the data fields. So we are on the top of the tier. And also this like quick introduction to the 30-day job post. So you will find there will be average 90 to 140 40 job post for data analysis, and 60 to 80 for data engineer, about like 60 to 100 for data scientists, and the machine learning will be around like 60s. And also the years of experience, you will notice most of them is require less than 3 years, not specified. Based on my experience, our student can apply like all this job, and they should all these like years of requirements, and because most of the time, because they have after they get educations, and they join the client project, and they do be comfortable to compete with others, even though it was said the job description mentions like it requires 3 years. Our students will still get interview chances and also get the job offer. And for the education requirements, like majority will be the bachelor degrees, and second one will be the no specified, and some of them they do require master or PhD degree. And there are some skills you need to learn to become data scientist, including Python SQL, Cloud, and the AWS, Tableau, and Spark, TensorFlow, and PyCharm, Pandas, NLP. So we will teach like a 90% like skills on this list, because you don't need to learn like know 100% of everything to be able to land a job. And also this for the data analysis, is SQL, Excel, and Tableau, and Python are like top 4. So Tableau will be similar as Power BI. So most what you want to do is for the visualization. For the data engineers, more focused on the cloud, and including like AWS, Spark, Snowflake, and also you may need using Databricks and Airflow. Kafka depends on the company preference. Okay, so once you know that's the skill you need to learn, and you will that's what you need to list on your like technical skills. For example, that's an example of the resume. On the right hand is mentioned the skills you are you are be comfortable with or you know about. So that's example from our students. So the program including like like basic like a Python SQL and machine learnings, statistics, visualization, and big data. Okay, so that's a skill which is you must have. The second one will be the experience. The blue box, the students make list examples, and he working in the big data and focus on the machine learning, building machine learning pipelines, and also he working in the iFutures in Toronto's, also the company in Toronto's, working on the building a advertisement recommender system. So there are just some examples, right? So yeah, basically you do need to have some kind of experience, and also the stack of the technical skills. And also you may want to talk about the project you've been work with, for example, the recommender system and all the pre-approving loans for existing bank customers, right? So that's experience, that's the project you've been work with. So there's another example to structure your resume. So personal informations, including your email. If you have LinkedIn or Git, you can leave it here. And then you talk about the skills you have. Most of the cases you will match like most of the requirements on the job post. And the relevant experience, for example, you want to mention the objective and the implementation, skill applied, and the impact. So it's better you can list like more than one company or more like or multiple projects. So for the projects, it's end-to-end project, and you should including the motivations and the employments. And I think that's one of the key, right? So if the project you've been work with is just meet the requirements of the company, so it will give you a very high chance to land this job. Actually, the degree, certificate, or the bootcamp is not that important in this case. The reason is the most companies are looking for someone who has more experience, doesn't have the education background. For example, if they receive a resume with no relevant experience or not even did any project, but they have like a good educations and in this case, as long as someone has more experience, even though have low education, not as like good education as other candidates, and because the experience take a most part in the interview, so the more experienced student will land this job or candidate will have this job. Okay, so is there any questions before I end this part about the resume or the skills you need? If no more questions, and actually we can answer all the questions and this sections, and we have asked many things. So let me pass to Alex. Alex is our project managers at Beam Data, and Ricardo also our project manager at Beam Data, because we are so we have few projects managers, but these two are very standout managers day to day, and they will share very valuable experience with everyone. Thank you, Alex.
Thanks, Adam. Let me just backtrack it a little bit. If we can return to slide 5. I just want to talk very briefly about the boot camp, and then by way of introducing you guys to the real client projects, because I suspect that most of you are career switchers. Some of you will have experience in the data science landscape, and some of you are perhaps entering it for the first time. That said, I do want to take the opportunity to sort of familiarize you with the bootcamp, and particularly why there are two aspects to the bootcamp, the part-time and the full-time. Part-time is over the course of 6 months. And the reason why the real client projects are optional in that regard is, firstly, throughout each of the boot camps, we will go through extensive modules on familiarizing you with the most pertinent skill sets required for the data science positions in data science. That said, you will intimately come to know and learn and strengthen your skills in SQL. We will then turn our attention to machine learning and data science. And then the bootcamp will conclude with a section on big data, and we'll even touch on deep learning, all the while sort of practicing and strengthening our Python coding skills. For the full-time bootcamp, that will happen over the course of 3 months or 14 weeks. And it is a full-time program. It typically starts at 9, ends at 4. And at each progressive module, you will be tested and given a number of assignments to keep you all busy. And this is for particularly for people who have that amount of time to devote intensely to this particular subject. And particularly if you find yourself in between jobs, or in fortunate enough position where you can sort of just focus on your education, that would be the main benefit of the full-time program. Whereas the part-time, and again, this is sort of why the real client projects are optional, is because oftentimes we have people who are in the midst of a job, or do have experience within the data science space, and are looking to either strengthen existing skills, or taking the time to familiarize themselves with skills they want to develop. That said, the curriculum is the same. It's only a question of how intensive the period is. But ultimately, after the boot camp concludes, then the real fun sort of begins, and that fun, I'll sort of segue into the real client projects, because after each boot camp, what happens is you become a graduate of WeCloudData, but immediately thereafter, you become a consultant for Beam Data. Beam Data is our consulting branch. So all the students who graduate the boot camp will immediately become data consultants for Beam Data, and it'll allow you a sort of fantastic opportunity. And it was, and please, I'd like to just somebody asked me about my own personal experiences coming through the boot camp, maybe at the end, because I'd love to share it with you. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we are going to we are going to put you in a position in which you can now practice and solidify the skills that you learned by way of real client projects. And for me, again, this was sort of one of the most important aspects of the boot camp, and what ultimately I think separates it, in addition to sort of the curriculum. And I touched on it, but it's definitely worth a look. If you go to our website, you can see the curriculum is top notch. We have, Course Compare has rated us the best DS Bootcamp 2023. We also have the best program analytics program 2023. Switch Up gave us the best data science bootcamp, and as did Career Karma, again, for best data science bootcamp. So the curriculum is good, it's extensive, and I will say it differentiates itself from what you will typically find, at least on the online space, because there is for me anyway, a huge difference when comparing online courses, even those affiliated with universities, and the educational sort of structure and program that WeCloud provides, because it's largely geared towards really applying the information, and it sort of develops at a fairly extensive pace so that you can fully implement yourself within the job market, having tested those skills ultimately on what becomes the real client projects. So if we can then, Adam, if you want to just jump ahead, we can go to the real slide, I guess 17, 18. So ultimately, I sort of touched on the benefits of the real client projects. And again, I'll go into them a little bit more specifically, but obviously they have, as I see it, both professional and personal benefits. Of course, they are going to enhance, develop any skills that will consist of, as you can see, data wrangling, web scraping, NLP pipelines. Some of the real client projects touched on computer vision and recommender systems, as you'll see shortly. But it really does have the effect of accelerating learning because you're allowed to apply these things sort of beyond theory. And again, that's where WeCloud differentiates itself even from other boot camps, in that other boot camps will provide you with that educational experience and maybe some career mentoring, but they won't have the, at least not to my mind, and please correct me if I'm wrong, they won't have that opportunity to practice and develop skills within the real world, within real client projects, so that you can tangibly put that on your resume already. Because as Adam outlined in a couple of slides earlier, what matters ultimately most is the experience. And sort of the real client projects solve the catch-22 problem, right? I was like, I want a job, but I need experience. I don't have experience, I don't have a job. And that for me, again, was the real benefit of the real client projects. Of course, the ability to develop all these newer skills and accelerate my learning. But and obviously those professional elements are there, in that, like, yes, it does help you get jobs because you can see you do have experience, but also from and I'll speak, I guess, personally anyway, from a personal experience, what it does is I guess it strengthens your confidence in going out into the marketplace, particularly in a new field. It certainly did for me, because you know everything until you have to sort of test it and then actually apply it. And then having that real client projects in the WeCloud space is that real nice buffer between like sort of thrusting you in the real world with projects that are on demand and sort of that you might not have a reference base. So this sort of moves it in between. It takes you out of the academic, puts you in the professional space, but understands where you are in that space so that it can sort of gradually move you to the professional space so that when you are looking for a job, you have one experience behind you, but also a level of confidence that you should ultimately take with you. Adam, you want to just get the next slide? Okay, now within the real client projects, there is a distinction to be made. And I'll make the distinction, but I would encourage you not to use the distinction yourself. Just sometimes it's handy for us to make these distinctions with the real client projects. Is at WeCloud and Beam Data, we have internal projects, and at any given time, we are working on projects within the Beam Data landscape as products for the company or for the boot camp. Against external clients or external projects, which are with clients in the professional space outside of Beam Data. Now, the degree to which one gets one or the other, from a jobs aspect, there's really no difference. And in some cases, because I often get asked this, like, should I do an internal or should I do an external? In many cases, I think the sort of the default for whatever reason is that the external projects are the things you want to do. But the external projects in themselves, while working with a client and interacting, and while you will get that opportunity to interact with those clients, they can be a little bit more rigid in terms of the timeline and the expectations and the scope of the project, because in some cases, you'll only be working on a smaller facet of the project for, however many months. And to some extent, where you are placed in those real client projects depends on your availability and the time that you can commit to them. So the real client projects can be a little bit more involved and extensive over a period of time, but ultimately the scope of them can be sometimes a little bit more limited in that you will work on this particular project. After that, you will move on to the next one. And the internal projects are can also be a little bit more extensive, and they can be a little bit more end-to-end, and it doesn't have to be maybe as pressure packed. And actually, when we talk about the client projects that we've gone into, I will talk about the chatbot that we are working on two projects developing a chatbot. One is external and one is internal. And for me anyway, the internal project is I think one of our better projects, and certainly in terms of in terms of experience. But ultimately, in the end of the day, you will decide on how much time you can commit, given the fact that you're sort of just coming off the boot camp, and obviously there's economic needs to be met. And then we'll also try and leverage your skill sets. So over the course of the boot camp, we will take into account all your strengths, and we will evaluate them again through those various modules: SQL, Python, machine learning, big data, all of that, so that when you get to the real client projects, we can leverage your strengths and put you in a position to succeed, and ultimately just sort of, while still nudging you a little bit out of your comfort zone so you can develop and expand newer skills and solidify the ones you've already learned. Next, if you can just turn to the next slide, Adam. Okay. So wanted to talk about one of the projects, and this is one of the projects I actually had an opportunity, I am managing at the moment, and funnily enough, I worked on as a new graduate of the boot camp, and this was recommender systems. And not even if you're in the tech landscape, but you can probably see the prevalence of recommender systems everywhere you go. They're all the rage, and everybody is sort of looking to leverage them in one way or another. And I'm sure you've encountered them if you've watched Netflix. Then there's like 5 recommender systems on their site. YouTube's algorithm provides you recommendations. All of the end aim of all of that is to increase user engagement. The idea being the more you're on my site, the more you're on my platform, uh, the more it can positively impact my bottom line. And this was no different from the client project that we were working on. Adam, if you want to just change the next slide and get introduced. Yeah. Ultimately, we were and continue to work with one of Canada's largest news providers and certainly one of its largest online news providers. And what they wanted to do was ultimately, again, leveraging recommender systems, increase user engagement so that when I went online or when you went online to their site, that you would ultimately be consumed by the material there. And to do that, they had a recommender system, which was sort of the most basic form of recommender system, and that was the most popular. And what that means is like, oh, okay, if sort of taking the parlance of like Twitter or Facebook, it was trending, right? So if they thought that they could look at articles over a period of time, a week or so, and see, oh, these are the most popular articles in order, so we can recommend those. But that might not necessarily tailor to your particular tastes or your particular interests. So to that end, we were tasked with creating a recommender system that was more in line with the individual's preferences. Again, the thought being that it would improve click-through rate and they would click on the articles and spend time engaging with the material. So to that extent, we took a look at two approaches in recommender systems, and there's a number of offshoots from those two, but generally they are the content-based recommender systems, which I'll go into a brief description a little later on, and user similarity. And then ultimately, we would develop these models and test it or test them, the models that we developed against the existing model they had through A/B testing. So we would take their current recommender, they would sort of split their user base, and we would test one of the models against the existing recommender systems, see what would win out, and make any necessary adjustments thereafter. But what we found is actually that we successfully did establish a content-based filtering algorithm so that actually still plays on this on the website to this day, sort of still recommending you articles. And Adam, if you can just do the next slide. Just wanted to show you the sort of data pipeline that this project entailed, right? So this website is the publishing company's news company's website. And obviously that's where you engage with the articles. But we had a tremendous amount of information from this news publishing company because they had thus far, tracked user history and preferences and interactions within their own website, so that we ultimately had to store that website in order to sort of leverage it. We first had to store it, and just because of the mass size of that data, we had to employ cloud services, in this case, Amazon Web Services, so that we can house that data there, so that ultimately we can take it from the data and put it into a platform, in this case, Databricks, which is a platform that will ultimately allow you to work with big data and leverage all that information in Databricks. So this is ultimately where we worked and where we developed, in this case, 5 particular models. And as I mentioned, of those models, we developed the content, like actually the basic content filtering model turned out to be the best model. The other ones may have even been a little bit more sophisticated, some of at least one of which included like some aspect of deep learning and all that stuff. But the content-based filtering, the basic content-based filtering model outperformed all the other models, including their own. So that's the one that remains on their website to this day, which was ultimately sent to the website through API, and then where you can engage with it and read articles that are specifically tailored to you. I think I'll have the opportunity to sort of like really flush out the difference between what a content-based filtering is and what a similarity user-based filtering is. But Adam, if you want to, I just wanted to show you sort of like the pipeline and on those distinctions anyway. So the two approaches that we were trying and some iterations thereof were collaborative filtering and content-based filtering. Now, each come with its own set of advantages and disadvantages. And in collaborative filtering, basically, it is the degree to which you have or are with similar users. So, for instance, if Ricardo and I have both watched The Godfather, and I hope Ricardo has, and he has enjoyed it as much as I have, then guess what? We'd both, and then I watched Godfather 2. Well, we have a similarity now, me and Ricardo. So, in all probability, Ricardo would get recommended Godfather 2 as well. So ultimately, it shares a sort of certain likeness with other similar users. Whereas the content-based filtering is basically more tailored to your own specific sort of preferences and what you've engaged with previously. So if I've only read books on, sports, it will take the content there and use that content to find similar articles, books, or any other property so that it can ultimately provide me with recommendations that are very similar to the content I've been engaging with, because the assumption is I like that content. And that's sort of like very briefly, the distinction between collaborative filtering and content-based filtering. And again, with respect to our project, it was the content-based filtering that ultimately won out at the end of the day. You want to, next slide, Adam? Yeah, just included this because I just wanted to give you a accurate size of, or an idea of the size of the data we were working with. So trends for data science, and hopefully we can touch on them maybe in the question period below, all of which are a significant amount of attention is being focused on big data, and rightfully so, because companies are finding ways in which to leverage ever larger and larger amounts of data, which in a sense are in a certain type of currency, and everybody wants it. So the idea is the more data that you have, the probably better off you are. And this was certainly no exception in that had 500 million rows of clickstream data, which again presents itself with the issue of Adam, if you want to change the next slide, some of the project challenges with recommendation systems and some of the things that we encountered while working on this. One of which was the size of the data, because ultimately you need to have a place in which you can store that much amount of data. And that also comes with a sort of price tag, because while there are places to store it, you need to find the most optimal, efficient, and cost-effective place to store it, and then have that be easily accessible to you so that you could leverage that data. Also, one of the issues with the recommendation systems is the role of novelty and long-term engagement. So ultimately, what you want to do is establish a nice little balance, right? Because I want to be interacting with things that I'm probably used to, but you also maybe want to expand the sort of the palette and introduce a bit of novelty in the process so that you can sort of taking my movie analogy, you can find other movies other than The Godfather, or certainly that genre. But all of that is highlighted by maybe the two biggest problems with recommender systems. And if you've worked with recommender systems or will work with recommender systems, you'll inevitably encounter the problem of data sparsity, which touches on the kind of data you have. So in some cases, we have a problem in which we don't have as much data, or the data isn't exactly the way we would like it. And what do I mean by that? First of all, it gives you a data sparsity, allows you to have sort of like a cold start problem. So if I start engaging, say it's the content-based filtering, and I don't have any data, or I don't have any data on Ricardo. I don't know what he likes. It's going to be hard to recommend him something. So that's the cold start problem. And there's a certain sparsity of data. Or if there's no similar users to me, then I'm going to run into maybe some problems, or maybe not make the strongest amount of recommendations. Now, ideally, to make the strongest amount of recommendations, you want to rely on explicit user data. What do I mean by explicit user data? Well, if you had a feature, and you probably do with Netflix, where you says, "Do you like this? Can you rate this?" If you click like, if you give it some rating, okay, that's explicit. I don't have to infer if you liked it or not. I can see you disliked it, you liked it. That's great. I can go on that data because I don't have to make any other inferences about that. While that's the best kind of data, unfortunately, it's the data that's available the least. Because maybe about 10 to 15 people ultimately engage with that kind of feedback and leave a review, leave a like. So oftentimes the case that you will have to rely on implicit data. And what I mean by implicit data is, well, we're going to take a look at your user history, and we're going to see, like, if you were watching a movie, well, he spent like half an hour watching that. Is that good? Maybe. I guess he watched it all. Maybe that's good. But at the end of the day, maybe you just left it on, and sort of like an afterthought as a background noise. But from the position of like creating a recommender system, we got to infer that, okay, they watched the whole thing. That must mean they like it. And ultimately, your assumptions, I guess, are proven true or false based on the degree to which you can provide the extent to which your recommendations are taken, and the user continually engages with the content you are providing. In any event, that is, in a nutshell, one of the projects that we were working on. And for another use case, I will throw it to Ricardo, who again is another project manager. And Ricardo, I'm sure you can introduce yourself as well.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. Yes, I'll introduce myself. My name is Ricardo Alamo. I'm also a project manager here at WeCloudData. Just a bit of background of my civil engineer. I did also an MBA. As you can see, I also like a career switcher, and then I converted to data. Specifically, the project that we want to show you here, the time series forecasting for water pipeline leakage. Can you go to the next slide, Adam, please? So this is a super interesting project that I enjoy. Like it was, I think like what I like the most was the creativity behind it. So this company was trying to get like to discover when a particular hydrant was having a leakage or not. And the way they did it is they put these acoustic sensors on them, and they could tell the frequency of the hydrant. So can you go to the next slide, Alan? So here it is, the hydrant. So the data that we have was from 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. So it was midnight. And we have like two, I don't know if you can call it leakage, but we have like two types of leakage. One was intentional and the other was accidental, right? So the one on the top, you can see that was the intentional one. Intentional one means like you are opening a faucet, you are taking a shower, something that is normal. But that changes the frequency, right? Of the water pipelines. And also if the one below, you can see the one that is non-integer, the accidental one. And you can see how it's going up, 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 until 9. RMS is just a unit of frequency. But you can see also the scale of both, right? So on the intentional one is from 1.5 to 4.5. And also you can see how it's more like, let's say, more homogeneous. You can see the spikes, but it's not going too up, too down. It's more like on the same range. On the one below, you can see it's from 3 to 9, and you can see how it's going up, 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 and it doesn't stop until it's fixed. And the time range is the same. Also, you can see it's from July 2021 until, February 2022. So that's the way they were like checking all these water pipelines and trying to figure it out if they had a leakage or not. Can you go to the next, please? So what we had at the moment when we were speaking with the client, we have historical acoustic data, and the important thing here, and that we will check later, is that we have with and without leakage. So we could say the behavior of both. So that will become important later. Another thing that the client wanted to check that was important for was the model seasonality, right? So if you think how water is used, it has some seasonality or some trends on days, on weeks, and on months. For example, on the day, people can be at home at 6 p.m. and they will start using more the water. And from 9 to 5, they won't have a lot of usage, right? So that's some of the model seasonality. Also, if you think maybe for seasons, you can think like in summer, there will be more water usage because people are, on pools, things like that. But in winter, the people are more inside and they will be using water less. So that's something that we also wanted to identify. And the third step is, of course, the goal, which was try to find a methodology to know when there is water leakage in the pipes. Can you go to the next one, please? So this is how was the workflow of this particular project. So we have the data from June 10 to February 2022. And then, well, the data was from June to March. But when you are training these models, you have to separate the data, right? From the training, the data that you're going to use for training and the data you're going to use for testing. Because if you don't do that, it's like, going to an exam, but you already have all the answers, right? So if you train your model with the test data, you're going to have like a perfect model. But obviously that's wrong, no? So that's why we have to separate the data. And here's some of the things that we have to do. The robust scaler is just like, so we can have all the features, all the variables in a range of values, right? It wasn't particular for this case, but I think a good example to show is, for example, let's say that we have prices of watches, right? And you have some watches that are $1 million and others that are $200. If you don't have like this type of robust scalars, your model can, just take the expensive ones and it won't be really good at the cheap ones. So that's why we try to have these variables at more or less the same value, so we can use that values to fit the model, right? Then we do model fit, which is what we do split the data as I told you with train and test, but we also do the model fit, which is just training the data with the training the model with the trained data, and then we predict it, right? And then we have to scale inverse, because to show the true value of what we are finding, we have to inverse the scalar that we do, so we can use the true dimension of the model. Can you go to the next, please? So one particular one that we were using was XGBoost. And here you can see that the blue line, which is the forecasted ones, and the orange line that is the actual value, right? So you may think here like, oh, okay, this is not such a bad model, because as you can see, like the blue line is more or less following the actual value, right? And one of the things that we measure here is the mean square error, which is the difference between your forecasted point and the actual point. And what we can see here, it was like more or less it was good, but you can see that at the end it's not getting all of the spikes. So these particular models, this is what they normally do. They try to stay, because that's what the model is designed to do, to minimize this mean square error. So you can see that it's not following that thread at the end. Can you change to the next slide, please? So this one, the one that we use, the long short-term memory. So this model is particular good because it's trying, so it keeps in memory part of the trends. So it's not just trying to use the, the last data from the last data point. So it's also trying to get the point, the up and the down values. So as you can see, it's doing it's doing a better job to what we are searching for. But if you check the mean square error for both, they were pretty similar. And I think that's something important here to, to tell you. And that's why the real client project is so important, is because here we don't really, it's not only about the statistical variables that we are using. It's also like, what is the project about? In this case, we were trying to get the data leakage, right? So if we're just in the middle, we will never get those spikes, and that's why it's so important to go to the business objective and try to understand it and try to fit the model to that business objective. And this was why this particular model was better than the other one in this particular case. Can you do to the next? So now, the business objective, remember, it was trying to detect when we have accidental leakage, right? So when we have all the data from all the pipelines that didn't have any leakage, that is the blue one. That is the forecasted ones. So what we did is we took all of that data when we didn't have any leakage, and we forecasted how it's gonna be for the other pipelines, right? And then when something happened, which is the orange ones, then we could decide, or we could realize that we're having a leakage, because we were comparing the pipelines that didn't have any leakage with something that is not following that trend and is going really up, right? It's having a lot of noise, a lot of frequency. So that's what it's doing. And the way that we do it is that, for example, on the right, you can see these like red dots. And those red dots is because we are measuring the mean square again, the mean square error. So the red dots is like an alert for us. And we put that in the code. So when we had a lot of red dots, which means it's above the threshold that we were trying to measure, that means we have a leakage, no? And that way we could notify the client that they have a leakage in that particular pipeline. Yeah, go to the next slide, please. So this is also like, this project is also a good idea on why the real client project is important, because even though that the client wanted to have seasonality, we only have that data for 8 months. So we couldn't really do like seasonality per year because we didn't have the whole year. But what we were able to do was like getting daily seasonality and weekly seasonality. That's where the ones that we could really see, how people come home at night and they start using it, how in the weekends people use more the water. All of that was in the data, but we couldn't do some of the objectives that they want to do. Like it was like, oh, what happens on the winter? What happens on the summer? We didn't have enough data to do that. So that's an important thing when you are dealing with real projects, that the data is real, that you're gonna have like problems cleaning it, we're gonna have problems. For example, here, we were not able to fulfill one of the objectives because the data is just not showing that. We don't have enough to show that, right? So yeah, that's one of the things that is super useful when you are working in a real client project. Next slide, please. So I'm gonna give it to Alex again, because he now is gonna talk about the internal chat.
Yeah, thanks, Ricardo. Yeah, just going to briefly touch on some of our other projects, and I wanted to briefly talk about the chatbot development using the question answer models, and circle back to that sort of distinction I made between external and internal. It just so happens that at this moment we are working on 2 chatbot projects. One is an external and one is an internal. And for me, the internal project is ultimately more challenging and more interesting because we get to develop that within the Beam data space, and we can experience the end-to-end project that will ultimately require and provide us some sort of like degree of exposure between for data engineering to data science, and then ultimately putting that chatbot into production, which will require some degree of machine learning engineering. But the chatbot we were working on for an external project is once again for that news provider. And the idea is that we would create a chatbot for them so that it might be able to answer any of their readership's questions. And I guess the question that you might have is, well, why wouldn't they just pass it through ChatGPT? Or why even bother develop the chatbot, given that ChatGPT is so amazing? And it is so amazing. However, there are issues with it, one of which is you don't control the output. ChatGPT does. And if you develop your own chatbot, you can develop more specialized output because you can control the prompt and the output. But there's also other considerations, like maybe I don't want ChatGPT to have access to the information that I have available. And in this case, the news provider wanted just to sort of leverage their own articles. So, and only in a particular sphere and section of finance. So to that extent, they wanted to control the output, and they wanted the answers to come specifically from their corpus or body of documents. And that is actually currently what we're working on at the moment today. But again, the opportunities are there both in the internal and the external space. And then I guess Ricardo, you can talk about loan default.
Sure. The loan default prediction, that's also super interesting. So this is for subprime lenders. Subprime lenders means like they are lending a house for someone whose credit is not like the best one, right? So you are not 800 or more on your credit score. You're 650, you're 700, and they want to know if you're going to be delinquent or not. That's basically and they take a lot of features. A lot of them are inside your credit score. Like for example, if you haven't paid, your cell phone or any other credit. And they also try to know where are you located, your history with other credits, things like that. The interesting part here is that there is not a lot of people who are delinquent, right? Because if not, the system won't work. So one of the parts that you need to do with this type of projects is something called imbalance label. And the imbalance label means that you are not going to have a lot of people who are delinquent, and you are going to have a lot of people who are paying on time. So you have to figure it out how to, balance that data so you can try to identify the ones that are going to be delinquent. So that's also an interesting one, and it's super useful for the lenders. The other two that I want to talk about just briefly is the time series forecast for inventory management, which this is just classic machine learning. It's just like I have 10 years of data. I know that, here is some seasonality. For example, let's say Christmas. I know that in Christmas, I'm going to have to, sell this particular SKUs. How many do I need for every, how many items do I need to have by November? So in December, I can fulfill all the stores. Things like that. And you can tell things, and you can add things that are interesting. For example, you can add economic information, like for example, how many people are unemployed, and try to get more features there so you can have a better forecast for that year. The other one is the website CEO. That is more like each website, all the brands wants to have a website that shows on the first 10 search results on Google, because like we all have to work with Google, right? People go to Google to look for some things. for everything really. So in that, the meta description or the description of each website, they have certain keywords and also the title. They even have some 2 titles now. So all of that needs to be optimized. So one of the things that we can do with the data is, search for certain words, get the competition information, or do like a competitive benchmark, so we can see what words are the ones that are on the top 10, and try to build websites like web pages inside the website that have those keywords. And also we have to optimize, the description of the website, the titles, all of that, so you can start appearing. It's not going to be happen, right away, but you start, climbing the ranks until you are on those top 10. And depends on the industry, can be super competitive, but it cannot also be like more easy to be done. But that's something also that you can do with the data. And I'm going to be back to Alex for the sports betting predictions. Oh, I can't hear you, Alex.
Yeah, so we work with a sports betting company, and what we try to do is devise an algorithm to as accurately as we could predict the winner of the outcome of a match. And the idea behind that is the more accurate our predictions were, then that would influence the betting odds put out by that company. And then that would ultimately impact their bottom line after that. But to this, there are any number of projects. Again, to some extent, some of the external ones, I also wanted to mention, some of the external ones are always in flux, right? Because there's clients we're engaging with, clients who we're finishing up with, and clients who are sort of just making their way inside of the sort of Beam data engagement with them. So to that extent, while we encourage you to throughout the bootcamp at the end, there's a week where we sort of prepare you for these projects. We do encourage you to put down your preferences. If you have an idea of what topic or you'd like to work with or industry you would like to find yourself in, then we certainly do encourage you to list your preferences. And should that project become available and match your skill set, then we would absolutely love to sort of make a match in that regard. It's not always the case that there's a match at that time, but ultimately any and all of these projects have their own real tangible benefit. And with that, I guess we could open it up to questions. And again, I would love the opportunity to share my experiences, but I don't want to take away from your questions. So if there is time, or if anybody's interested, you can ask me. But failing that, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Either you can unmute yourself and ask directly, or you can type it in the chat and we can address it. I will say that it's projects also at this point in time right now give us a great opportunity, particularly with what I wanted to mention with the chatbot projects. They are leveraging the key buzzword of the day is large language models, of which ChatGPT is one. So now is a very exciting time to get into the data science space, particularly because it seems like we're on the ground floor of this moment in time. It's almost like the .com period. This is probably going to be the large language model period, where companies, forward-thinking companies especially, are looking to leverage these large language models. Question from Giovanni. Are these projects more for like experienced data science or beginner friendly? Okay, funny you should ask. And I will answer that by way of introducing my experience, which I guess in the end I was dying to do. I didn't have a background in, I didn't even have a background in STEM. Career switcher though. And very interested in sort of the emergence of data and predictive analytics, and how this was sort of becoming the way in which everybody was trying to position themselves and predict outcomes. And I got interested on that front. But ultimately, I didn't have an experience, certainly in the tech space, and not even with like traditional STEM, which is, I guess, where we sort of traditionally find our students. So that said, I would probably consider myself a deep beginner. But ultimately, through the program, you worked hard, and I had that time to dedicate. And ultimately, I ended up working on the recommender system project. And at that time, the sort of the time I was alluding to, that week where you can sort of state your given preference, I saw that was one of the projects we were working with, and I was like, no, I can't. I can't do that. That's out of my skill set. I'd never developed a recommender system, so I definitely didn't want to do that. And ultimately, I worked on my first client project was an internal project. And what that did is it gave me a certain degree of confidence, again, because no one's going to be put in a position where they're going to fail. And certainly, again, we position everybody to their strengths. But what ultimately happened within the course of that first boot camp, or sorry, the first client project, is I'm like, oh, okay, project managers, the ones I were working with were great and very understanding and nurturing and informative. And to the extent that they led the way in that first project, I sort of acquired a deeper confidence, so that by the time the recommender system project came around and was offered to me, I was like, yeah, all right, I can do it. Why not? I'll try it out. And fortunately, and I'm sort of still amazed to this day that, yeah, it evidently it was doable even from a beginner. That's not to say it wasn't without its challenges. It certainly was. But as long as you're up to the challenge and are willing to sort of put in the work, then it is accessible to you. It is definitely accessible to you. And again, all these projects sort of have varying degrees of specialties and present with their own sort of difficulties, and but ultimately, we again, I'll sort of always go back to, we try and put you in the position where you can ultimately succeed. I hope that answers your questions. I would like to think that they are, while challenging, beginner friendly, particularly to those people who want to put in the work.
I just think I wanted to add something
Thanks,
about Alex's experience. I think also like it's super something that is often overlooked, and you also get a lot of practice when the projects are all the soft skills, right? So it's communication skills, working with your teammates, trying to explain something to the client. All of that is also super important because we're not dealing with machines, we are talking with other people, right? Even the clients, everyone is just, we're humans, and all of that is important. And when you're working with a team and you're working on a project and you have deadlines and everything of that, like the soft skills are going to start, showing up. And it's super important you practice those, because also when you are having interviews, you have these behavioral questions that also are going to be, a challenge to answer them correctly. So these soft skills that you're gonna develop during the real client project also are important, and also are something that adds up to your CV and, to getting a job that is ultimately.
Yeah, I'd like to underscore that point by Ricardo. I think it is a good point, because even throughout the boot camp, you have, obviously we have the opportunity to develop sharp and technical skills, but as data scientists, it's sort of underestimated the degree to which soft skills will carry you forward. And what I mean by that is ultimately you don't you don't work in a silo, obviously. You work with a team, but more than that, you're tasked with solving business problems. That's your sole role. There's business objectives and sort of generally broken down, as I'm sure most of you guys are aware. The degree to which you can save the company money or make the company money or both, so much the better. But ultimately, as a data science, you'll be tackling those business objectives. And then based on the work you do, you will be interacting with stakeholders and communicating the solutions that you present and how they're going to be implemented and how you came to them. And to that extent, certainly soft skills of communication, organization, all those stuff plays a vital role, because if you can't communicate that, like, you may have the best solution ever. But the degree to which you can't effectively communicate that is the degree to which it might be dead in the water. And certainly throughout the boot camp, we do try and reinforce that, because there's a number of presentations. And I should also mention in my background, I had the opportunity to be a assistant instructor on 3 of the boot camps. And I always found the presentations to be an invaluable experience and opportunity, because it's there where you can verbalize your models, your creations, and it is sort of like the dress rehearsal to ultimately what you'll end up doing, and that's speaking to stakeholders. And to that extent, I was always sort of a stickler to keeping it within a specified amount of time, because that added the additional element of, I guess, realism, because if you can't get it out in 10-15 minutes, then no one's going to have time for it either. So but anyway, I was like the challenge of trying to communicate and express my ideas as thoroughly, concisely, efficiently as possible inside of that time frame, so that you can walk away knowing, oh, okay, that sounds smart. Is there any other questions? If you guys are formulating any or thinking of any, I just wanted to, while we have this time in between questions, I just wanted to bring up 2 things. One, I just wanted to sort of tie in the first part of my experience with WeCloud. Again, not being in the data science space at all. When I went looking for a boot camp, there was a couple things that were ultimately important to me, and I rested my decision on a couple of factors. So one was the boot camp had to be of some distinction. It wasn't going to be any boot camp, and to that extent, there were some contenders who qualified based on certain awards, like maybe the ones you mentioned, best boot camp, 2021, 22, whatever. So that was certainly one that kept WeCloud as a consideration. And then the degree to which I would have something tangible afterwards, because okay, I went through the boot camp, and now what? Where do I go from here? And to the extent that it would be tangible, I had to have mentoring, and we do have mentoring after following the boot camp, so that you will ultimately be paired on a 6-month mentorship with someone who is embedded in the space that you want, and you ultimately interact with them, and they'll sort of guide you along your journey toward your ultimate job destination. But then again, there's the real client projects. It's something tangible I could put at the end of my resume, especially for me, right? Because I graduated in political science and history, so there was no STEM background there. So it was particularly important for me that there'd be something more tangible, and the real client projects offered that. And again, and I will say this, me myself, I guess integrity of any entity, company I work with or interact with is important to me. I like to know that they as much as they can, have that I won't just be some conveyor belt process that, they'll process me through and there you go and see you later and all of that. And then they'll stand behind their product and they'll stand behind me. And that for me was particularly so. Those two elements really tipped it in WeCloud's favor. The two elements being the real client projects and the sort of what I perceived as the integrity behind their product. Because ultimately, when I was speaking with the sales person who was sort of going to bring me on, I asked them a series of questions, and one of which, and this was what sort of cinched it. He goes, and this was during the time of COVID, and I was like, "Well, what's the placement rate look like?" And he goes, "Alex, I'm going to be honest with you. At before the pandemic, it was about 90%, and now and this was during the pandemic, it slipped to 75, and I thought that was entirely refreshing. That's just me. But the fact that I wasn't being sold anything that wasn't like I wasn't being sold a pipe dream or anything like that. And that I was dealing with an honest player really meant a lot to me. So, and I mean, I still stand behind the company being now a part of it, but that was the sort of was ultimately my experience with WeCloud as a student and new graduate. Adam, the question is, will there be a recording available for Idris? He joined a little late. Sorry, Adam.
Yes, the recording will be available on our YouTube channel. So if you miss this first part, like most of part of this sections, you can follow our YouTube and it will be posted next day. Yeah, I will post it tomorrow.
And again, if feel free to ask any and all questions. But I also, before leaving, I just wanted to direct you to a particular place because, again, I think if you are new to the data science landscape or are sort of already embedded in sort of looking to maybe make a career switch within that landscape, if you want to go maybe, data analytics to DS or something to that effect. I do want to here, I'm just gonna copy it here. Maybe you guys can. It is a link to our blogs, and in that blog, I have one about I think it's called, let me see, I forgot what it's called. It's called The Future of Data Science, Job Trends, Skills, and Technologies You Need to Know. I ultimately frame that, oh, there it is. Yeah, I ultimately frame that as being entirely beneficial to those career switchers and to those people who are already in the data science landscape, because I know when I was starting out, everything's so general, and I couldn't really get a lot of specific answers. So ultimately, and hopeful, I wrote this blog, and hopefully, it gives you a greater sort of window into the various jobs available, and in terms of like salary, because I think one of the questions were, can a data professional live in Toronto? Yes. If there's a section there on the average salary that that is available to you as both like a data analytics, data scientist, data engineer, and machine learning engineer. And to that extent, I do. And then the sort of like the top 10, 15 skills that each position is requiring. And more on that late, sort of funnily enough, I will be doing another blog, just sort of looking at Toronto specifically and what jobs are available, how many jobs are available, as well as sort of other more specific, pertinent issues. And ultimately, the idea is that we will expand this blog out into various cities, so that if you are in, some Dallas or wherever, you can sort of familiarize yourself within your own sort of local environment. And that is actually a consequence of another internal project we are doing, and that is to study and analyze the job trends within the data science space. Obviously, because we want to sort of like stay on top of the scene and see what is developing, what is emerging, and adjust our curriculum accordingly. But for our students, we also want them well prepared and well armed, so that they have the fullest picture of that data science landscape as they emerge into, their professional fields. So I do encourage you to check it out. We'll actually be coming out with, by way of that internal project, we'll be coming out with a dashboard that you can interact with, and it will show you the top 15 skills, or for this particular position, or there's sort of many sort of options in which to play around with to sort of inform yourself more fully. So I would say stay tuned for that, and stay tuned for the next blog. Should indicate when the jobs report. The idea is we'll come out with a monthly jobs report to help everyone along. Excuse me. Okay. That said, yeah. Oh, I should say that by way of that, we do scrape a website. I won't name it, but we scrape it for all the pertinent details. So it's a fairly extensive scrape. We get a description of and these are some of the things Adam was alluding to in his earlier slides. We scrape it for the skills required, the education that they're asking for, the experience, the city, the salary, salary range. So even the ratings, like almost everything imaginable, we are scraping for to get an indication of how the job market landscape is shaping up over time.
Great. So thank you, Alex. I just want to add one more thing. And I think also there's one way for you to understand why real client jobs are very important. Is by reading the job descriptions. You will notice the requirements of the educations. Like this is examples. Normally they will require bachelor or higher degrees, or you have certificate in data scientist. For the full-time, you will receive diploma, and for the part-time, you will receive certifications for the data scientist if you join our bootcamp. I think this education always the first thing, at least like bachelor degree or diploma or certifications in data scientist. And then the second part, the years of experience, is why that's where the real client projects start to help you to get through the interview, right? So that's like a like hard requirements. Like you cannot skip without any knowledge or without any experience. If you go through all these jobs, they always listing the education and experience. Then they're talking about what kind of skill you need, right? So, which means if you have like also they talking about experience, it had to be a real world experience. It's not the data set you get from Kaggle, or it's not some like a data set that's not able to deliver any values to anyone. So there will be require some experience. Start with the business problem, the challenges, and how you handle it, and then what's the result, feedback, improvement in the planning in the future. And with this experience, and it will help you to pass interview. Then you're talking about how strong about your analytics and the problem solving, and also maybe talking about the Python or the Python library you've been used. How about the statistical programming libraries you've been employment to your project, and how strong knowledge with SQL and the database, right? So yeah, so that's all these the skills is a leverage on your experience. It doesn't when you go to the interview, when they ask you, they don't really ask you where you're good at, how good you are good at SQL, or how good you are at Python or machine learning. The more thing they want to know, like how you use your SQL, or how you what kind of project you have been done, or what kind of a problem you use SQL or Python to solve. So simply talking about I know SQL Python normally doesn't give you advantage, because nowadays there are many competitions in the job market. If you don't know, first of all, if you don't learn enough skills, or you don't have enough experience, and when we're talking about the possibilities, that you will have less possibilities, and then you will have less chance to land a job. So yeah, so it's very important for you to prepare yourself for the interview. So the real cloud project will be both that chances. First of all, you will fill up the gap with your experience, no matter you are new migrations, or you are new graduate, new grads, or you are doing the career switch. You always not able to get a job because of lack of experience. The second thing is even though you have experience, but it's now in the North America. For example, you have experience maybe from Asians, South Africa or anywhere, but you don't really have the North American experience, right? So you do need the real cloud project, or the real world project help you to fill out that gap. And when you're talking about your experience, you're always gonna start with, I've been working with a company or industry for 6 months or 2 years or 1 year, right? So you talking about during that experience here, what kind of project I've been involved, maybe the recommender system, forecasting, or maybe the like chatbot, or maybe the image detections, maybe the AI, or maybe you are expert to do ChatGPT, right? So you can do the prompt engineering. So then you will list what kind of project you be involved. Then you don't really, normally you don't really need to talk too much, because the interviewer will ask you about can you talk about your knowledge about the recommender system, or they want you to know can you talk about? Then in that case, you talk about what you be used during that project, right? So you don't what you're gonna mention is I build a recommender system because the company needs some tools to help them to make decision to maybe make suggestions on one product to the customer. And during that, we do some research, what kind of research you've been done, and how you understand the business problem, and how you gonna when you do this, when you try to solve this problem, what kind of model you've been used, and what's the challenge during this project, and what's the result. So you will talk about the experience, not talking about I know Python or SQL is it will be too weak when you go to the interview. So always give the very good storylines, talking about the project you've been involved and all the challenges. Actually, the challenge is very good story for you. It will improve how you good at problem solving, or working with others, communication, or problem solving. Yeah, so that's very valuable for you to show your domain knowledge, or show your skills and your experience, and help you to pass the interview. I think that's another example why it's a real cloud project.
Sorry, I just wanted to add, since we're on the topic of reading job postings, I do suggest that you guys all, we have an event next Thursday talking about the job market more directly, and it'll be headed by Shawa, who is the head of WeCloudData. And it was particularly helpful for me when I heard it because he sort of breaks down these job postings because they can ultimately be very intimidating and you can sort of already disqualify yourself based on certain criterias. But in a way, it shows you a way in which to decode it and what 3+ years really means. So it's like if you have 1 year, you can apply. It's generally sort of like the the sort of unstated the thing. And he would know he's been sort of in the data science space for 20 years and has been monitoring all this for a good number of years anyway. So I do encourage you guys. We have an event on Thursday looking at the job market directly. If you do get a chance, I think he has an Ask Me Anything session as well. And he'd probably more than gladly take up the how to read a job posting, just so you don't disqualify yourself out of the gate. Okay, in that sense, we are open to questions. We will be available, I guess, for the next little while. If anybody wants to hang around, chat, then love to chat. Right, there's the info session there.
I think there's one thing I want to mention. So obviously,
That's a good question. Cold call applications. Is anyone still getting a job? I don't know anybody who has. But yeah, I would encourage you to ask that on Thursday. I honestly don't know anybody who has.
Yeah, I think that's like more like it's better you ask someone to refer you over the LinkedIn, and it's way better than a cold call. Yeah, because you don't know the person who pick up a phone, and well, the person can help you pass a message, or he's the person in charge. So cold call normally, it may not work in the most case unless the like somebody tell you like there will be a prediction and they're looking for someone, maybe a cold call will works. Yeah, but most cases probably just looking for someone on the LinkedIn, and or if you go to a LinkedIn or go to the job post, like find the person who's the person who's the job, and then try to connect them, see if you can put your portfolios or your resume and like ask if you can get a chance. And yeah, so yeah, I think cold call normally it maybe not works right now. Yeah. Oh, and also, sorry, I forgot to mention one things for actually for the real cloud project. And normally each program will be last for 3 months. Some program maybe take longer, but most cases like will be 3 months. And if you join the real cloud project, and normally you should test your resume after first project. And most of students like who graduate from the boot camp should land job within 2 projects. So which means like an average 6 months. And for the time commitments, and of course, if you can put more time on the project, will be great. But still, if you have full-time job or you're busy with family, there is a minimum time requirements, right? So you can talk with our project managers, and we will discuss because there are few factors for you to find your best match the real cloud project. Depends on the availabilities about the project itself, and also of course for on both sides, for the projects and for yourself, and also for their personal interest, and also depends on the time commitment, right? So for example, if you like to join a project, but the minimum requirement may be like 20 hours or more than 20 hours, but you only can commit like a 15 or even 10 hours. So even though that's very good project, but it may, because of the minimum requirements of the time commitment, and it can make yourself overwhelming easily. So yeah, so there will be, I would say there will be some I was like manually recommended system, like we do it internally to find the best mesh project for you.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point, Adam. And one in which we can certainly emphasize the real-time projects. We do take into account the fact that there are realities to your world outside of, the data science boot camp. Whether that's through, job, kids, some of their combination thereof, that, there is different levels of availability, and we have different levels. We have projects that will be more or less immersive, depending on how much time you can commit to that. So that even if you can commit only sort of 10 hours a week, there's still a space for you there. But by that same token, if you can commit to more of the sort of the upper end, which is 2025, then there's certainly projects available for you there too. And I think somewhere in the chat there I did or did I, or maybe Adam has a link to the data science bootcamp. I do encourage you guys to check it out and familiarize yourselves with a little bit more concretely about with what is offered. And ultimately, speaking for myself, it's sort of it's still sort of hard to fathom the leap that personally that I made anyway. By the end of the bootcamp, and certainly by the end of the real-time projects, I'm still I'm struck by it, but ultimately definitely worth it.
Okay, so I think if there are no more questions, let me stop recording.